I had this question come to me via email from a student. They wanted me to help them out with this question from chapter 13, specifically section 13.3, number 11. Each of you should have a very similar problem as you go into that homework and work this problem. The only difference would be the numbers involved. And so it talks about this loan that's been paid in full before its due date. The regular monthly payment that they were making over the time period was $252. The APR was 8.8%, and they paid it off in a way that had nine remaining payoffs at the time. So they had nine remaining payments, I guess is a better way for me to have said that, when they made this payoff. And so they paid it off 9 months early, right? If it's a regular monthly payment. So that's great. So the A, B, and C are all interrelated questions. We need the answer for A in order to answer B, and we need the answer from B in order to answer C. So it's very logical that they would have asked all three of these questions, and they're just trying to guide us through the process. One thing that should be known about this is very, very formula heavy. In fact, the formulas go from bad to a little bit better to okay, right? And so the very first one is pretty awful what we need to do in order to calculate the finance charge per $100 financed. Because we have to use a formula. I know you've worked some questions in the homework, and this may be the very first one in which they didn't provide you a little table where you could look up the number of remaining payments. So you just go to a row that says 9. You go to an APR that says 8.8, and you'd kind of go in, and whatever at the cross section of that row and column would be the age. And so that chart was limited to like interest rates that were like a 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5. Everything was 0.5, right? And so they were all these half of interest rate, half an interest point difference. And so they want us aware that there is a formula. We can avoid the needing to use a chart, and the formula will give us the exact answer. And so let's go ahead and work this problem out with the realization that what we do first is going to be very calculator heavy. Then it's going to get better and better and better. So if we're going to do the finance charge per $100 finance and know the appropriate formula, we should know its symbol. The finance charge for each $100 finance has the symbol H. And so here's the formula. H is equal to N times R over 12 times 100. And that's all divided by 1 minus, and in parentheses 1 plus, R over 12 to the negative N. And then off to the side, minus 100. So you do that big division there, and then you subtract away the 100. That formula will appear in your book and also in the online lecture stuff that you see. And so our job is to be familiar with it. Now, our promise to you is everything you need in order to calculate this H is here. So when you're dealing with a payoff and you want to find this H is always the number of H is always generated by this N, and this N is the number of remaining payments. Typically, we use the letter K, but this H formula is allowing for even to be calculated on a full loan. We want to be able to figure out what was the H for the 9 remaining payments that we got to miss out on. So in this case, and I'll use a different color here as I substitute in, N is 9, the 9 remaining payments. R is always the interest rate. So as we go here, this is over 12 times 100 all over 1 minus 1 plus over 12 negative. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting in all the stuff that's kind of just stagnant, that's just there. No matter what the numbers are, those numbers would be there. So as we go through here, we need an R. Well, our R is the interest rate, and our interest rate is 8.8%. So that's 0.088 for us. Remember that APR, you're probably really good at it by now, being in section 3.3, but the interest rate is always written as a decimal. occasionally I have a student come to me and say, hey, Jensen, I'm not getting the right answer. And we look at their work, they put in 8.8 there instead of 0.088. And we make that correction and move forward. There's one other number to put in. I have to put in this power of 9, right? And now we run it. And it's not necessarily the nicest formula to run. So what I think I'd like to do is show you what that looks like on a calculator. I think I can remember our numbers really quick. So I'm going to toggle over to a camera so that you can see the way I input this in. So we lose my ability in this process, though, to keep the numbers side by side, but I think it's better that you see the calculation and how it's entered in. So n was 9. So let me turn this back on and clear that out. N was 9. So 9 times r, which was 0.088, times, oops, let me go back there, times 100. Oh, I did something wrong. You know what I did? I didn't look at my formula carefully enough. 9 times, okay, I'm going to have to look at my calculator, 9 times, and I did the 0.088, but if you look at your notes, it's divided by 12. And then that's times 100. And we get this nice number 6.6. Often it is a nice numerator up there, but sometimes it goes on forever. We don't care. We're just going to let our calculator let it ride. We're not going to write it down. You can if you'd like, but you can also just let it ride in your calculator, and you're going to divide by, and then it's a 1 minus on the bottom. So we've got to make sure to tell our calculator to do that subtraction before it does the division. And the way we do that was with an open parenthesis. 1 minus, and then there's an open parenthesis, 1 plus, and r over 12. And then we close that parenthesis off, we raise it to a power, and we're going to raise it to the negative 9. And we can close that parenthesis off. Now that's the closure of the denominator. And when I hit equals, I'm going to have a number 103.70. So as I come back over here, I'm going to go ahead and put in that 103.70 number. I'll translate that here for us. It should be the last time that we have to look at the calculator. See if I can get this to drag down a little bit. There it is. And so our h is equal to 103.702, and it kept going. And we have to remember we still have to subtract away this 100. So h is the finance charge per $100 finance. So it's a monetary amount. And so we're going to do natural rounding to the nearest cent. So if I subtract off the 100, I get 3.70. A 2 follows, so my h is 3.70. That's what comes out of that process. So a big lengthy calculation, but if you allow yourself to practice with it a little bit, it can go pretty quickly. The next thing that we need to do is use the actuarial method to find the amount of unearned interest. If you remember that formula, unearned interest has a U as its notation. And the formula looks like this: K times capital R times H over 100 plus H. And that's it. That's the formula. It tells us, hey, this is the unearned interest that the bank's not getting because you paid it off early. So we're looking for that unearned interest. K is the number of remaining payments. So we're familiar with that number. That number is 9. R is the regular monthly payment. We haven't had to use that yet. So we're going to come back up top and realize, oh, our regular monthly payment is $252. And that's being multiplied by H over 100 plus H. Well, we just figured out H. H was 3.70. So we put it in both places. Now, my recommendation would be to say, okay, this is 9 times 252 times 3.70, and I would quickly add 100 plus 3.70 for 103.70. My reasoning for that and why I'm suggesting it to you is now we're one big happy family. This addition that was there before is not going to mix well with division, and I'd have to use open parentheses like I did up top. But if I just quickly add that together, now I have multiplication and the fraction represents division. So I'm just in one big happy family. My calculator is going to handle that no problem. Just working left to right, I would type in my calculator 9 times 252 times 3.70 divided by 103.70. And I get the answer 80.921, and it just keeps going. Now remember, this is unearned interest. This is money that the bank didn't get. So we're going to do their rounding to the nearest cent. And they've missed out on $80.92 in interest that you would have paid if you had just continued to make those last remaining 9 payments. Well, you paid it off early. So the payoff amount shouldn't include this unearned interest, the interest that the bank didn't earn because you didn't have their money over those 9 months. So to find the payoff amount, we go to the payoff amount formula. I don't think it has a symbol. Every time I think I've seen it, it just says payoff amount. And the payoff amount is what you would have paid minus the unearned interest. So they do the +1 in there. K is the remaining payments. But again, you made that payoff amount right before that the 9 months. And therefore, that's factored into the payoff amount, that current payment with the interest. So if you remember, our number of remaining payments was 9 plus 1. Our regular monthly payment is right above there. That's the 252. And the unearned interest we just found out was 80.92. Well, like I promised you, the formulas just keep getting better and better. Wasn't too long to do that one. And so we're just going to take 10 times 252 and subtract away 80.92. Our calculator knows order of operations. It will do just great with that. So we do 10 times 252 minus 80.92. And we end up with the number of 2439.08. Well, that's what you owe them. That's the balance for the product, right? We bought something, and those 9 remaining payments also had money going towards the item that we purchased. Well, we owed still $2,439.08 towards that purchase. What we didn't have to give the bank and what we saved in the process was $80.92 in interest. So good on us, right? We saved some money in that process. So we want to remember what's important. What's important is to walk in realizing, okay, if I'm asked for a payoff amount, I'm going to need that formula. If I'm asked for unearned interest, I'm going to need this formula for unearned interest. And if I'm going to have to calculate the H, if I'm going to have to calculate the finance charge for 100, I'm going to need that formula. And so you make sure that you're having that formula written down and referring to it. Also make note of the fact how each one of these things was kind of embedded in the other. The ultimate goal was to figure out the payoff amount. But to figure out the payoff amount, I needed to know the unearned interest. Well, in order to know the unearned interest, I needed to know H. And that's why the first question was, what's H? Each time relying upon information that was given in the beginning, plus a new calculation in there. So hopefully this helps. As always, if there's questions or concerns, reach out to me via email or come to the Zoom sessions and we can talk it over. Thanks so much for watching this solution.